Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, Innovate Smart, Not Hard, Rethinking Strategies for Terminal Automation and Digitalization. My name is Maria Tarasova. I'm your moderator for today, and I'm very excited to have you all joining us in this discussion. And we have an amazing expert panel today, and our panelists will be talking today about everything from overcoming the challenges to balance the investment cost and ROI. And of course, the most exciting part for me is share the real world insights and implementations from the projects that are already live. And we will introduce our panelists in a second, but before we go and do this, I have a couple of organizational points for you to mention. And while we're at it, just say hello in the chat, let us know where you are in the world. Maybe also let us know what you are doing in the industry, because we're very, very curious about our audience here today. Yeah, we will start discussion shortly. Our discussion today is also backed by our recent insights from the survey and the report that we have done last year. And in this report, maybe some of you even taken part and answered these questions, but we had more than 100 industry professionals sharing their insights on automation and digital innovation. And if you would like to get your copy of the report, the link will appear in the chat shortly. It's free, so don't be shy, download it. And yeah, let's discuss these insights together. And at the end of the webinar, we will try to have some time for your questions. So please ask your questions either in the chat or in the question section. Vote for the questions that you would like to be asked, and we will pick out some questions at the end of the webinar to ask. And you will also notice Charlotte in the chat helping us out and posting some links and information. So yeah, you can also address questions to her. And with this, without further ado, let me please introduce our experts today. We have a great lineup representing both automation and digital innovation for ports and container terminals. And yes, with this, I would like to pass to Peter from Fernride. Peter, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Maria. Welcome, everybody joining us this afternoon. My name is Peter Selei. I'm Senior Director, Business Development and Customer Operations at Fernride. What does it mean? We are basically contributing to making sure Fernride is building the right products and features and onboarding the right strategic partners, if you wish. To that extent, we've been walking and talking around the globe, visiting terminals and listening really carefully, what are the problems they have, what are solutions that they are considering, where do they want to bring in outside help. So some of these insights I'm going to share with you today as we discuss. More about Fernride. Basically, what you need to know for container terminal operators, Fernride provides intelligent solutions to automate mixed horizontal transport along the container terminals themselves. Through a pragmatic approach to automation, we are redefining the roles of humans, and basically they turn from their manual roles to assisting automated vehicles with exception handling. Maybe you can go to the next slide or the video itself as I talk. I wanted to have a more dynamic background for you to see how these vehicles operate. In principle, from the ground up, we design an architecture and a development process with CE principles and industrialization in mind, right? So in other words, aiming to perform at scale and not just in demos. In this video, you can observe how testing these vehicles for safety-related certifications look like. And in the next few months, we are aiming to accomplish major milestones in these efforts, as well as with potential customers who wants to deploy these at their terminals. So exciting times, definitely. But in principle, what I observe is that terminal operators, they want to move humans from dangerous environments to safer places and in parallel improve predictability in their operations. Since less humans want to do these kind of jobs, they are having a difficult challenge, right? Increase salaries, find new reliable source of labor, while keeping costs and throughput commitments to their customers unchanged. So automation is not really a push at this point. I think it's inevitable, But this is my provocative statement and intro to Fernride. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Peter. We can stop the video now and go back to our slides because I would like to pass on the stage to Marcel.
Yeah, thank you very much. So my name is Marcel. I'm one of the co-founders of Passfy. And Passfy generally is a digital truck handling platform, and we're looking to tackle outdated manual processes and the existence of missing information transfer that actually disrupt the supply chain throughout terminals, truck handling processes, and like that cause a lot of inefficiencies and a lack of synchronization among the stakeholders that are involved in these processes. And so on our platform, we connect trucking companies, truck drivers, and terminals and depots. And what we are doing is we are synchronizing the trucking companies and the drivers with the terminals and the depots to enable enhanced security, real-time yard visibility, and improved capacity planning for the terminals, while on the other hand making sure that the processes at the terminals are more secure and simplified for the drivers and the trucking companies. The benefits of these lead to having an improved efficiency in the truck handling process for the terminals as well as for the drivers. We reduce the costs that are associated with truck handling processes by making sure that no further hardware is needed for automation purposes. We enhance the visibility of what's going on in the terminals, in the ports, and we enable a better scalability of processes when it comes to increasing the throughput of terminals and ports by making sure that the integrated approach of bringing drivers throughout the terminals is actually synchronized with other modes of transport and with the horizontal transports. And with that, I hand over to Jan.
Thank you, Marcel. Yes, hello, and a warm moin from my side, as we used to say here in Hamburg. I'm Jan, co-founder of heyport. I've been raised in the Port of Hamburg ecosystem, so to say. I've been working here for more than 15 years and more than 7 years as a vessel coordinator here. So really, I was coordinating between the different types of vessels that are calling the port, from container to bulk to cruise lines, etc. And by getting these kind of real world or real insights in a way from the industry, it feels like when you coordinate a port call, there's a lot of communication involved. You have to align a lot of different stakeholders, updates, planning times, and there's an ever changing kind of planning process ongoing. And with these kind of things, we said, okay, there must be a better way how we communicate and coordinate around port call and berth planning. And we came up finally with heyport as one of the digital solution to overcome this kind of communication inefficiencies that we see in the industry when it comes to port call planning. So data from different sources that needs to be collected, validated, and we really want to break these kind of traditional berth planning silos to foster smart and sustainable port operations through a new way of communication with each other. So our platform is trade agnostic by design, so it's made for all kinds of terminals and cargo types, so from container to ro-ro cargo as well as dry bulk and general cargo as well, proven by more than 5,000 port calls on the platform so far. And the benefit behind it, that not everyone is planning for them themselves, but also focusing really on a central planning where you can achieve at the end just-in-time arrivals of your vessel, so you know well in advance, have a reliable arrival time or planning basis for your operations. Could be the vessel operator, but also could be the terminal operator side, allowing you to save a significant amount of CO2 emissions from the port call, 14% when we talk about just-in-time arrivals, and a significant amount of manual work that we can reduce. So from these daily operations, from these operational decision makers. Yes, over to you then, Danai.
Perfect, and thank you very much. Last but not least, Danai, could you please introduce yourself?
Yes, of course. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Tana Antonopoulou. I'm a project manager with HPC Hamburg Port Consulting, specialized in digitalization and terminal automation. So I have a hands-on experience in terminal operations and project work in greenfield and brownfield projects. The focus of my work having been IT implementation, process management and optimization, and automation integration, supporting projects from planning to procurement and implementation and go live. A few words now about HPC. So HPC was founded almost half a century ago now as a subsidiary of HHLA. So we are a maritime consultancy. We work primarily with port terminals and hinterland transportation in various kind of projects, and our services cover the entire development cycle of port projects. More specifically now, in the field of automation, we have so far completed more than 50 projects in the field of automation in various degrees of automation and with different kind of systems and technologies involved. During these projects, what we do is we combine operational, planning, IT, and engineering expertise to cover end-to-end the automation scope. Let's put it this way. And also in order to cover from the conceptual phase to the go live. So our experience spans across the board, and we are very happy to be here today contributing to this discussion with everybody. Maria, back to you.
Thank you very much. We have really unparalleled experience today here with real deployments and experience from real life projects that we're going to share. But before we dive into this, I would suggest that we look at where the industry actually stands today. And for that, we go and look at the insight from our report. So you can see that according to our latest survey, levels of moderation are rising. So you can see that the moderate levels of automation are higher. The high levels are a little bit higher. What you don't see on the slide is that terminals report that levels of digitalization are even higher than that. And the trend is very obvious. Everyone wants to automate and digitize. But Danai, my question to you is, you have a lot of different experiences in the industry, working with a lot of different clients. How do these trends correlate to something that you see in the field? And more importantly, what do you observe as the main drivers for automation and digital innovation?
Yes, so first of all, the data don't lie. So as you also mentioned, so digitalization to start with is more affordable, more accessible, it's easier to implement. So it is only natural that for organization, this brings the quicker wins. So a wider adoption of digitalization in that respect makes perfect sense. And this is also something that we see in our day-to-day business. So understandably, organizations, they want to walk before they jump. So they start the journey by implementing digital platforms and tools in order to do so. And talking a little bit first about the drivers for digitalization. So it's so first of all, enhancing the transparency. So enhancing the visibility on what's happening on the processes, on the waste of the different processes in the organization. Support the regulatory compliance if needed. But something that is very important and links also afterwards to automation is shift from this manual-based, people-based decision-making to a more data-driven based decision-making. And this is very important also to lay the foundation for subsequent automation. So moving now more into the automation, so there are different drivers. There is increase of operational efficiency, labor challenges. So this could be the lack of labor, or could be that labor is very expensive, increase the safety or increase sustainability. But this is very interesting because we like to talk more about expectations with organizations rather than pure drivers. So the question is, in order to identify what really adds the more value to each organization, is to identify the individual expectations. And then these will be the ones steering what level of automation makes sense and will be the right solution.
Thank you very much. These are very interesting insights. And with this, I want to shift to Peter. Peter, my question to you also kind of refers to the insights that we have in the report that reveals that, of course, large terminals, they lead the way when it comes to automation, and smaller terminals, they take modular approach. So something that Danai mentioned, everyone needs to figure out what is the right way for them. Doing assessments in terminals around the world and, talking to different operators, what automation trends do you notice? And when it comes to size of terminal and their location, are there any differences that you can point out?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we can break it down to a couple of pieces. So when you look at the big picture, when it comes to automation, this industry is fairly a slow mover and a little bit of a conservative in approaches, taking very proven solutions to their operations, because everybody is prioritizing reliability, uptime, don't change something unless it's broken. At the same time, there is a very clear track of interest and actual progress in implementations for automation that I perceive. And when you have more resources, potentially more budget to do, and group operators, they lead the way also because they can allocate resources to do the research. Nevertheless, I have seen both parties being more engaged in different ways. I think smaller operators, they more rely on outside help and looking for port consultancies, as well as potentially suppliers like Fernride or my colleagues here, to learn about a topic, and then they see if they can create a business case that is enabling to move forward. But very pragmatically, what I can highlight is we've been seeing binding RFQs being posted out there, which is definitely a shift from the past 12 months. So there are operators that are willing to procure this. They think there's a price point that is going to enable them to save and tackle some of those points that Danai mentioned already, like labor, lack of labor in this sense, or higher cost related to this, better productivity, and so on. In all of these cases, my takeaway typically is nobody's rushing into this. There's a step-based approach, as you also called out, and also this great report is showcasing that you start small, you prove it out, and then you expand further without disturbing the ongoing operations and prioritizing uptime and reliability. And this is typically also what I've been telling interested parties to follow. And this is what we have been doing also in real operations with HALA, HHLA in the past. And once we are hitting a milestone, parties can proceed and see the values. Seeing is believing, and we're going to touch base on that, I guess, as we move forward.
Thank you very much. Talking about seeing is believing, actually, I would like to now go ahead and talk about the impact of this innovation that we can already see now in the real life implementations and real life examples. And, the report suggests that digitalization leads the way and automation follows, which is absolutely true, because there has to be a foundation first before automation can come. But each of you has experience in those real life projects. And starting with you, Jan, I would like to actually tap into the projects and real life implementations now. So your platform is all about transforming how planning and coordination works. Could you please walk us through a few successful implementations and also the impact of those that you already now observe?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, when we got approached, for example, by terminal operators in the port, we always see a bit of the same setup there. So we have operational decision makers doing the planning, but they are in a constant the firefighting mode, so to say, day in, day out to plan the shifts for the next few shifts, typically for the next 24 hours or so something. We see also a bunch of different tools already in place for planning. So in terms of digitalization, they have terminal operating system in place. We have ports where port community system is in place. But in terms of the level of integration that we see it at a very low level, or also the beloved kind of Excel spreadsheets, which are quite common for planning. They're also not integrated at all in some way. So we see a huge manual effort to keep all this data in sync across either different planning tools that all have a certain purpose or scope fulfill certain operations on the terminal level, or between the different stakeholder groups, for example. So it could be internally, like the maintenance team of the terminal, who also needs to know, okay, when do I plan certain vessels' arrival or departures, because they also have to align with the planning of maintenance and scheduling of maintenance. Or if you have external stakeholders like nautical service providers, tugboat operators in the port, for example, or don't forget also your customers, also to update them. And Hansaport, for example, one customer of heyport. So, by the way, Germany's largest dry bulk terminal and most automated one on the global level. They're always raising the bar when it comes to automation of cargo operations. So they fully automate their cargo operations process. They are capable to handle and to discharge 110,000 tons within 24 hours of iron ore, for example. And all these cargo operations process is done fully automated. But the planning process, so to get cargo operations up and running in a way and to plan the port calls, was purely manual before. So a lot of manual communication was involved there. A lot of again this beloved Excel spreadsheet around. And by using heyport, they were able to really turn it around to reduce the manual communication by 90%, because it's now to get the data on for the operation decision makers is much easier as it was before, because we integrate a lot of relevant planning data for these people and for our users on the platform in a central way, but also to communicate and sharing the planning afterwards. So, for example, with local agents, with the port authority, etc., it's getting easier and easier, and it doesn't require any manual effort anymore. So this is also how we help terminals to achieve the goals, to minimize manual effort in communication, to also prepare for next steps like just-in-time arrival, the potential that I've already shared, 14% CO2 emission reduction on the port call. Basically the concept that we're following is a bit based on liner shipping, but I also told you and shared the experience with our customers in dry bulk, for example, that this concept can be adopted also to other kinds of terminals. So it's working across all kinds of terminal in the industry.
Thank you very much. I bet those, your customers are probably asking themselves how they worked with manual processes before after starting to use your tool. Talking about efficiency, this is something that you also mentioned, and Danai also mentioned efficiency as one of the main drivers, for doing all of this. Marcel, my question is to you, because your tool is also aiming to improve the efficiency at terminals and ports. Could you talk us through, the deployments that you already have and how that works?
Yeah, of course. So if we're looking at passfy, I mentioned earlier that it is a digital truck handling platform. And with that digital truck handling platform, we enable digitalized truck visit and a digitalized truck visit journey for the external truck driver as well as for the terminal operator. To get a little bit more specific on what the exact benefits of that are and how that works, we'll look into a few examples of what we did so far, and I'll take you on this journey of the digitalized truck driver. So as we globally have the ISPS code in place, so as a security standard for terminals throughout the world, often drivers need to have some sort of terminal or port specific identification mechanism in place before they are able to enter the terminals. And traditionally, that's either that they need to manually go into an office, show their ID, and then are able to enter the terminal, or that they receive an RFID card after an initial registration. So what we did, and that's in the port of Hamburg in 3 major container terminals, is that we enable a digital ID verification for the drivers. And that is, on the one hand, at the initial registration, so the drivers can do that from home. On their phone, they're able to verify themselves. And we make sure that all of that is that this is a security standard that is very high, that it is according to all data privacy laws that are in place, and that on the other hand, I cannot just give my RFID card to you, Maria, and you're going with your truck to the terminal and say, I'm Marcel. So to make that a little bit more vivid, what's happening there. And so this, on the one hand, reduces the time that truckers spend before they are able to enter the terminal for the first time, but it also reduces the required amount of admin personnel that you have at the terminals and ports, just to administer this kind of initial entrance of drivers. And also, and that's at another terminal where we went live, that's in an intermodal hinterland terminal in Romania, where the trucking companies as well as the drivers are able to book slots for the access of the terminals in a dynamic way, and so it's synchronized with the internally available resources of the terminal. And so an example with the horizontal transport equipment, with the yard capabilities, etc., to make sure that we reduce the time of the truck driver that he has to spend before he is actually being handled. And so if we're looking at the truck driver journey, with passfy on the one hand, before he is able to enter the terminals, he can make sure that he has everything set up with our platform, but also he can make sure that when he's arriving, he's actually being handled right away and doesn't need to further wait, by also enabling a digital validation of his data, of the references, etc. And then at the point where he is actually entering the terminal, so all of that happens before at his driver journey, but at the point where he's actually entering the terminal, what we're doing, and that is again in place in all of our customers, is that we enable a digital check-in of the driver. And so as he's verified beforehand, we authenticate him, so make sure he really is the driver he claims to be. He is checked whether via GPS whether he's actually at the terminal where he is, and whether he is allowed to enter the terminal. And the simplicity of passfy, while we are using biometrics and all of these kind of security mechanisms, the simplicity and the low costs of our implementations lie within the fact that the smart authentication that takes place is done within our application and our platform, and not outside at some hardware. And the QR code that the drivers are actually scanning is simply a sticker that is attached to a pole or to a pedestal or something. So you don't need any additional hardware, no additional monitors or something that you need to implement. And so the upfront investment you have with passfy is pretty much not existing. And so that means when we're looking at the main point of our webinar today, so in digitalizing smarter and not harder, that means our time to value is very short. And that's one of the major benefits when we're looking at actually getting the value out of the platform easy without taking so much uptime before that.
Thank you. You mentioned also safety in the very beginning, and one of the questions, I'm monitoring questions in the chat, by the way, to our audience, please ask your questions. One of the questions is about exactly this: how does digitalization can help, remove undeclared containers or illegal entering of the terminal. Could you maybe very shortly, briefly comment on this?
Yeah, happily. So there's obviously, it depends a little bit on the exact situation that we're checking against. But one of the things where we are improving security for terminals through the digitalization approaches of passfy is that we make sure that, as I said, the data of the driver and of the cargo he's delivering is validated beforehand. And that only driver who has the right to take out containers actually can take out the containers because he is authenticated. And as I mentioned earlier, it's not possible with passfy anymore that Maria enters the terminal as Marcel and takes out a container. But also, it's not possible for Marcel, who might have the right to enter the terminal, to take out a container that is not allocated to me. So I can only take out the container that is allocated to me on the basis of the processes that lie behind that. So with the freight forwarder, the shipping company, etc. And so that is how we increase security. But as you mentioned it, I wanted to quickly also take the point of safety, because that's two issues that are very relevant, especially in the heavy duty industry where we are in. So looking at safety also before a truck driver enters a terminal with passfy for the first time, he has to go through some safety training, and it depends on the terminal how exactly that turns out. But for many of the terminals, it's a video where they need to answer questions afterwards to make sure that the drivers actually know how they have to behave at the terminal, which plays a huge role if we're looking into automation, because when no human is involved in handing over the container anymore to the truck driver, then it is necessary that the external truck driver knows exactly how to behave in order to stay safe throughout the entire handling process.
Absolutely. A lot of stakeholders are involved. And, I will use your last statement as a bridge to Fernride. So, Peter, you also mentioned in your statement before that in the last 12 months, you've seen a shift in the market. A year ago, there was initial curiosity about automating of terminal tractors, and now things become more concrete. What are the benefits that potential customers expect from this solution, and what are the benefits that can be delivered?
Yeah, good question. I would roll back and say, maybe we can all relate to this, right? When do you go to a doctor? When is the pain big enough to act on it, right? Many times it's pretty late, and then you have urgency. So I feel like that's a driver, that chronic pains are getting to a point where people want to act on it, and then they want to improve their solution, or they want to go higher compared to where they are today. And that drives the interest, is that they feel there's something off, and they want to fix it, or they want to improve on it. And that's okay, because there are benefits what you can achieve with automation, but not everything. And it has to be a good fit. And what I picked up on is there is more concrete action that are being considered versus like, what is this? So it went beyond education, and I'm talking specifically about autonomous terminal tractors per se. But I think, as we discussed here today as a group, it becomes kind of obvious, right, that digitalization, automation, electrification, they all come hand in hand eventually when you have a holistic view, and that's sometimes lacking, I feel, still. And there's sometimes still focus on silos, on quick wins, and where do I start kind of thinking. And that can have an impact later on. In principle, the trend is that they want to get going and get quick wins. And that's typically not really possible to get the quick wins in. As Marcel also mentioned, sometimes it's not the upfront cost that is prohibitive to get quick ROIs, but just the mindset of get started and accept that it is going to pay off longer time. When automated guided vehicles were started, they were not a great success, but they are today. And that's what I'm expecting from all of these new innovative technologies, that you need to go there, test them in live operations. That's also our experience as Fernride in Tallinn and other locations, right, that we've been operating. We have seen how integration with the TOS works, what are the fixes that we want to implement. We learn together, we harden the product, and there's this feedback loop, and that generates even more interest, because then other parties, they want to go and, hey, can I see this, how it works, want to touch and feel. As humans, we are all pretty interested in learning. Curiosity drives, and what can I get out of this? Is this true? Is this working? So I like to think about how do we help each other overcome fears and just take the first step here, and step into this kind of unknown, which is going to be a known situation pretty much. And for us to prove that industrialization is key, right? So getting that CE stamp, machining directive on, we are steps away at Fernride achieving that. Super exciting moments. And I think once that's done, then the floodgates open, and then you have a different issue, which is demand and capacity. So I'm not a fan of FOMO, but we may see a situation when some early starters who are out there already today, they will see the benefits, and some others will need to wait a year or two to catch up. And then also the good examples in Hamburg of high-level automation are driving a lot of benefits today, but they started way many years ago, right? So that's just the nuggets that I wanted to leave here.
Thank you very much. I think, talking about, the impact of innovation, the benefits that we already see today, as you said, there are still challenges and barriers, and a lot of them are in the mentality and mindset. However, these are very valid concerns, that we should address also today and talk about the strategies to overcome these challenges. And going back to our report again, these are the main concerns that were cited in the report. And if we look at the top 3, it's all about technological complexity, integration with existing system, but also high initial investments. Danai, going back to your experience, and working with the very high variety of different terminals, how do you help your customers to navigate these challenges?
Yeah, so first, maybe I would like to start with integration, as it was number 1 in the graph you just showed us. So integration is quite interesting, because in our experience in the different numerous projects we have done, some more complex than others. To be honest, integration is always the common denominator as, let's say, a choking point. So the point is how to overcome this. Of course, start with a careful planning, but the most important for me is to have an holistic planning. So automation projects is not only, organizations should not only focus on the technical aspect. So they should approach the automation project holistically. That means, okay, start, for example, from clearly define the objectives and the scope, but then parallel with dealing with the technical aspect of the automation, manage very well your processes. So with automation, operational processes change, and this is key. So do not underestimate the effort you need to put in your processes. Focus on the safety concept. So there are different levels of automation, but there is always the issues of safety. The safety concept should be comprehensive and should bring together the technology and operation, so you cannot disregard it or forget it or just let it run parallel. Then do not underestimate the organizational aspect and the effect of the change of automation in organization. So you need very robust change management, very clear, let's say, restructuring or redefinition of roles and responsibilities. And amongst these, definitely, and this comes from experience in a lot of firefighting projects, have a dedicated integration team. And last but not least, on the topic of integration is testing, and more testing. Normally, testing is considered like as all timelines, when you're pressed on time, you see testing, you think, oh, I don't need it, I'll cut off from it. But this is literally the only way to make sure you can go ahead and have your live operation without jeopardizing, for example, your SLA. And now on the investment side, so of course, technology comes with a price tag. But the point I would like to stress is that when organizations elaborate the business case, do not underestimate the price of integration in that process. So automation is not just buying some new machines, new technology, and put them to run. There is a whole, let's say, hidden, very big cost that comes with the change management, with the integration, with the time and resources that are required for the implementation and the testing. So be honest with the investment and calculate in it also more softer factors. And link the investment to the initial expectation, so to make sure that it all makes sense in the end.
These are great insights, and yeah, you can really see that they're backed by your experience. Before we talk about like stakeholders and workforce, I have another question for you, Jan. From your experience, we talked about digitalization leading the way, automation following. It's the logical order, but can digitalization really be the bridge to automation?
Yes, of course it can. First, I would also want to add a few points more on the technical aspects on what Danai just said. I fully agree with her. Also, in terms of she touched the point of change management, organizational transformation, which is super important. But also on the technical side, what we experience from our side as a central connecting element, so to say, between a lot of different planning tools that are in place from the TOS, port community systems, etc. So there's simply no standard APIs in a way available that cover a wide variety of use cases in a way. So we see in many ports and many terminals, we see local solutions, local integrations with local platforms. Tailor-made software is also one aspect, which is kind of tricky now when the dynamic arises in the market. We see an increasing demand of data, etc. That you keep pace of all these changes that are arising have been arising during the last few years when it comes to data sharing, data integration with other platforms. So this is also feeds into the aspect of this kind of overall investment concerns that we see. To the question how we can use digitalization also to bridge towards automation. It's also fully agree with Peter. So it's to get started in a way. So also the kind of beloved Excel spreadsheet, well known across all the terminal operators on the globe, is yes, of course, part of a digital kind of digitalization in general. But we're talking about other things when we're talking about digitalization. So it's a bit digitalization light, if you want to say so. So steps that we see is, of course, increasing the data availability through integrations to be more open also in the planning tools that are already in place, make them available in a streamlined way. Also agree with Peter, have a clear scope on what you want to achieve, so that from our side to automate this port call, berth planning and resource planning and shipping, because it's a super manual thing. At the other hand, we also need to be careful here, also as solution provider in a way, because it's a complex topic in general. So it's many influencing factors that we see. So a lot of knock-on effects, and if you don't have a certain level of integration, also maturity level of your platform and your solution, it's simply it's first step, but it cannot compete with the people who are sitting there for decades, sometimes being the operation decision makers at the end. So, and then if you have these things, if you have the data available, integrated, you start doing analytics, and then doing the first steps to automate also this process. So example also from shipping, from the container shipping side as well, from just-in-time arrival concept. It's first to talk the same language. It sounds simple, but it is also kind of a tough topic if you want to have it on a global scale. Involve the stakeholder, make the data available, and then doing slowly but surely moving towards automation.
Thank you. These are very, very good points. Before we go to actually the how-to talk of this webinar, the point, that also got a lot of concerns and votes is the workforce impact and resistance, because there are people working, in container terminals and ports, and often automation is seen as the enemy of workplace. And this is probably also like the biggest concerns with the unions. Peter, you are aiming to take drivers out of the terminal from the container transportation, from the horizontal container transportation. What is your approach and strategies with customers and potential customers when addressing this topic?
Yeah, look, I mean, what is automation about is human and machine collaboration, right? To increase the productivity of what one human can do as an output. And since this AI topic became quite a big thing, hype globally, right? There's a lot of fear around it and how does it work? But in principle, in most of the cases and implementation, even if you go down to levels of ChatGPT, this is human-assisted AI what's been prevalent to date, and this is rightfully so. We don't necessarily want to get the genie out of the bottle and then let it go rogue. We want to have contained outputs and make lives and businesses better eventually. So I think this is generally just trying to address again the problem of there are workforces out there at risk of accidents and being in dangerous work environments, and how do you show a better opportunity for everybody involved, stakeholders, for a safer job, to do the same kind of output from a good location when you have access to bathroom, coffee, and so on and so forth. What we do typically is helping to reskill, retrain existing workforce, or help them if they cannot rehire, offering better jobs for equipment operators, really. And in that sense, what happens is basically we have to prepare, understand their situation. They can come over and monitor processes. What Danai also highlighted, I completely agree. Doing testing, they can see how this works, and they can become also supporters of the technology versus trying to undermine it. And I think that, as everything else, when there's humans involved, it's a change management process. You need to be able to communicate. You need to get started early and come up with a plan that is being communicated, thoroughly. In any organization, when there is change, people are trying to fill the gaps with their brains, with their minds, and the more you pre-fill, the better the chances. So it even goes beyond automation and more about how you do this kind of integrations. And with experienced companies like Hamburg Port Consulting, and also in startups like the ones that we are talking about here, having that experience that you go in with a pragmatic approach really helps versus trying to blow up everything and promise that everything is going to be perfect from day one. This is not true, but eye on the prize, right? We are talking longer years and not on 1 year amazing miracles on any terminal.
Thank you very much. I completely agree with you. Training, involvement of stakeholders is super, super important. That's why turning to you, Marcel, because you have human drivers, and human interactions involved. Maybe you could share a few lessons learned from your experience, something that maybe you have not expected in the beginning, but you learned maybe some anecdotes about this, but yeah, maybe some insights.
Yeah, thank you for the question, and I agree with Peter on a lot of the points that he just made, because my general view on digitalization and automation, when we're looking at the humans being involved, is you cannot just implement these digital solutions and impose them on people without engaging with them first and understand what their challenges are, and with the digital tools, but also apart from these digital tools with the existing processes. And you need to really analyze and look where the humans are striving in their tasks, in their daily lives, and on the other hand, where automation or digital tools can take care of certain tasks more reliably and have their strength. And so we're looking at our lessons learned that we have from our projects, from our implementations. And I mean, I'm working in the port industry for 12 years already, so did a couple of similar projects before that as well. Peter mentioned it. It's a lot about communication and understanding how people are doing their things today and challenging the status quo and looking into figuring out what could be the future vision of these tasks and what's the purpose of them, and where do the real benefits of automation and digitalization lie. And that's not only in an ROI, especially if we're looking at unions, etc. You won't be able to convince unions about automation if you're saying, all right, yeah, this saves this amount of money and loses this amount of jobs, because that's not the focus of automation. It doesn't necessarily need to be. And we've talked about safety, an example, which is one of very big benefits you have with automation when you're having people involved. But apart from communicating a lot and understanding what's going on, you need to make sure that you are actually interested in the people that are involved and that you take them seriously. Because if I'm talking to truck drivers, and I'm doing that almost on a daily basis, they do their job for 30, 40 years. And I'm supposed to tell them how to do their job in the future. That's not the way it works. I need to understand what they are doing, why they are doing it the way they are, and try to tell them about upcoming changes, do that very thoroughly, and even enable myself and our company to utilize multipliers. So people who know their job really well as key users, to make sure that they are able, after some training, to train others as well. And that's important when you're looking at changing the daily life and daily work life of people by imposing digital tools and automation. We need to understand what is the impact these solutions have on their daily lives and on their daily tasks as well, and identify what kind of pain points we might be able to tackle by implementing our solution without that being the focus. And one example that is that I love about what we are doing on a daily basis is the language barrier, because we have a huge issue in Europe and all over the world, but especially in Europe, with the lack of truck drivers in the future. Already today in Germany, they're missing over 100,000 truck drivers. There's studies showing that it will be around 2 million missing drivers by 2030 in the EU. And if we're looking at these numbers, we need to take care of that. And because you have a lot of mobility in this process, and people are coming from all over the world, it is obviously a huge barrier if people are going to an office in Germany, in a German port, and try to tell the people in the office there about the problem they have with being handled at the terminal. And so our platform, an example, enables them to communicate in their language and get their problem solved in their language, without requiring some German-speaking person in the office to take care of that, who doesn't understand the person in the other place well. And so identifying these kind of points where you can solve actual problems of the people with your digital tools and automation, that is really what helps with the implementation and helps reduce the resistance. Because if you are at the point where they understand the benefits for the entire stakeholder section, then this can really be a huge success. And that's what we've mainly learned throughout all of our implementations so far.
Thank you so much for sharing. This is very, very inspiring. Before we run out of time, I would like just to show this slide, and these are also the insights that everyone can find in the report. So on the left-hand side, you can see the expectations from automation and digitalization. So things that were named that people want to achieve the goals. And on the right-hand side, you see actually the actual benefits that were communicated to us by the same target group. So by people who have already implemented solutions, and you can see that there is a match. So the expectations are getting fulfilled, and the question is only how to approach the automation or digitalization, and at the end of our webinar, I would like to talk exactly about this. So then I turn into you, with your experience with different terminals, ports around the world. what are the key phases, or what are the approaches that different terminals can use to start when they start thinking about these projects and they actually want to start this journey?
So first of all, it's a little bit challenging because there is not one approach that fits everyone. But I would like to approach this question from a different angle. So we think that there are, let's say, 3 levels and 3 stages in order to approach the adoption of the automation organization. So starting from more like higher level, more like the strategic alignment. So the organization needs to identify the drivers, expectation, or as Marcel said, find like a real problem that needs to be solved. Explore the best practices and understand the organizational readiness. Then go a little bit to a deeper level, to second level. Focus more on developing the concept. So develop a viable concept. And for that, maybe you need to come up with different options and then validate 1 or more options via simulation. Elaborate an implementation approach that fits with your organization. For example, do you want to try new technology like autonomous trucks? Maybe opt for a proof of concept in a small part of your terminal. Or do you opt for a mature technology? Then you can go for a full-scale implementation, but maybe also then come up with a detailed plan that is viable for your organization in a phased approach, so that you have to make sure that during each stage you can still respect your SLAs, you can still serve your customers. So this is on the concept development stage. And then moving into the implementation and optimization phase. So in the implementation phase, we have all the things that were discussed already so far. So first identify the requirements. These will be the basis for the purchasing and managing the suppliers. Focus on the processes, ensure you have a comprehensive safety concept, and then integration and implementation management. And then last but not least, do not forget or do not, underestimate the need for continuous optimization. So automation systems need continuous fine-tuning in order to identify what could be better, what could be improved. So this could be from my side, let's say, of a kind of a higher level approach for a terminal or an organization that would like to proceed into the implementation of some level of automation and is hesitant where to start.
Thank you very much. Great tips. I hope everyone was making notes. If not, you can watch this webinar on demand after this. But you mentioned something, conceptualizing actually what you want to do. And when it comes to new solutions, sometimes it's hard to imagine, what needs to be done. And if you don't have enough resources in your terminal, could be also an issue. So Peter, a question to you, maybe you have some tips you would like to share with our audience. How do you work with the solution provider actually when implementing a new innovative solution?
Maria, it's difficult for me to follow after Dana. Great points. Took a lot out of my sales. So I would rather say, mindset, right? Just be open and open up. What I sometimes experience, it is, they have this joke that when you have the tax season and you need to submit your taxes, you're trying to guess what exactly your tax burden is, even though the tax office knows exactly what it is. And I'm going into these conversations with terminal operators to find out what is the right business case, and they know exactly what is the right business case, but they don't tell us, what would work for them exactly and how to get there. And that's not really necessary, right? So if you open up and you tackle like, hey, what is exactly the problem we are trying to resolve here with automation or digitalization or decarbonization, then it can be focused. And it doesn't really matter if it's innovative or mature. I think if it comes out that the business case is there, technology feasibility is there, then you can go all in, but with a phased approach, right? We touched base on this one earlier, and you can go area by area. You can go gang by gang at the shoulder ship crane when it comes down to vehicles, for example, and then basically you are committed. And when you're committed, it's going to work out. So obviously the early due diligence has to happen in a proper manner. But if the parties are not committed, then that's a major risk, I think, to any project. So this is how we are trying to go through KPIs. When you meet them, you continue, right? Versus saying like, oh, let's just do a pilot and then it drags on a year or two, costs are sunk, and then maybe there's no follow-up and neither parties are happy. That is how I see it. Obviously, I completely support the point that you have to support reliability, keeping the SLA intact towards the existing customers. And that's why I think the transition plan itself is what's super important to have in place. And for innovative solutions or new kids on the block, they need to make sure it works, right? If you lock in an SLA, like Fernride needs to have an SLA, then we are going to make it work. If we need more people on the ground, then we are going to make it work until we meet those SLA by the solution itself with extra people. But that's the cost of the supplier, and typically that's normal in any industry when you introduce a new solution.
Thank you very much. Follow-up question. I mean, we talked about planning, transparency, data. I'm turning to Jan and Marcel here. Jan, maybe starting with you. How does smart planning support this transition?
So yeah, but just let me also maybe do some advertisement following on Peter's topic. This commitment that these particularly smaller companies also have when it comes to working together with terminal operators and elaborate new solutions, etc. We are all solution providers that are providing innovative services from practice for practice in a way. So what we see, we don't need to tell us what is a container, for example, these kind of topics from your customer point of view. And once you, and also to touch this point with commitment, these smaller companies have a very high buy-in when they find a good partner, where they can also co-develop and grow together in a way. So, for example, we also do currently just onboarding session for 5 new terminals in a Moroccan port. So kickoff was early January, and we'll go live within 3 months with 5 terminals. So this is what we see also as a very positive aspect from our customers' point of view. So this high delivery pace that we can allow them. Yep.
Thank you very much. Marcel, do you have any points to add to the discussion?
Yeah, hard to add any points from what Jan has been saying. So apart from the fact that obviously what Danai, Jan, and Peter, all of them said, that it is very important for solution providers to also provide all of the, let's say, boot on the ground personnel for such implementations, to make sure taking that seriously, no matter where the terminal is, no matter how difficult it might become. I think one of the most important points, and it has been slightly mentioned as well, is that you need to understand what is the big vision, where you want to go with your product, with the terminal, so your terminal partner, but also what is the first steps you're doing towards that. And make sure that you are able to deliver this first value very quickly, and look at things where you are convinced together with your customer, so with the terminal as a partner, that this will actually provide a benefit to both parties, because the terminal needs to be as invested as the provider in order to push through challenging transition phases. But also you need to have the bigger vision in mind, and after the implementation, after the first value delivery, you need to continue to make the next steps with all the stakeholders that are involved. And then I mentioned that for automation, so that automated systems continue to learn, and that holds true for whether you have automated systems that learn, or whether it's digital tools that broaden the scope of application for a terminal. Because also in these kind of points, obviously, if you're promising a vision of where you want to go, and are only delivering the first 2 steps of that vision, and don't continue to do these next steps then afterwards, you're letting everyone down. And so it is very important to deliver value up front, but then continue to do that on a rolling basis. And in the implementations we've done so far, we see many adjacent systems that are in place. So they could be port community systems or other systems that were once implemented with very good intentions in mind, but that stayed at that first level. And that is something where you need to really take care of, that you're not dropping your customer after having your first value delivered and after checking the box with, yes, I've got a new customer. It's not about collecting logos. It is about delivering value and about integrating deeply into the processes to make sure that we're actually able to transform global logistics and not only promising that.
Absolutely. Put some customer value first. I think that all of us could double down on this. Thank you for this statement. Moving on, we wanted to do a 60-minute conversation today, but I think everyone is so engaged and we had so many nice points to make that actually I want to take a little bit of time for some questions. And looking at in the question section here, I see the question that has been upvoted the most. So it is about convincing people to adopt the new technology in terminal operations. And maybe from each of you, just few words, maybe 2-3 sentences, your opinion about this. So the question is, could you explain how automation can positively impact and enhance the daily operations of terminal employees? So really going down to the basics, I would say. Danai, would you mind starting with this?
Yes, certainly. So I think because the question is about terminal employees, I would like to start with splitting automation into parts. So we have the process automation and let's say the equipment automation. So first of all, process automation, that means automate the day-to-day processes. That means how this enhance the daily operation by eliminating waste, eliminating lost time in doing tasks that are repetitive. So then you have employees being able to focus on understand the real issue problems and solve the real problems than spend their effort on these, let's say, repetitive tasks. So make sure, eliminate mistakes by having, let's say, this kind of system for process automation. And then we have the equipment automation. So by having in your terminal equipment automation, you can increase safety. So that means safety accidents that are mostly a result of human error can be eliminated. So straight away, this is beneficial for terminal employees. You can improve the environment where the let's say with regards to the environmental aspect, you get a big gain when you opt, for example, for electrified solutions. Again, electrified could only be non-automated, but when normally you opt for automation, you also opt for an enhanced sustainability solution. So there's different ways. I don't want to take time from the other guys, but there are a lot of positive impacts that in the end, automation, either process, equipment automation, enables people to work in a safer environment, to focus more on what really matters.
Thank you very much. These are great points and very, very comprehensive analysis of this. To the other speakers, do you guys have anything to add to this, to the statements?
Yeah, maybe from my side briefly. So also my advice to listen to your customers, your users in a way, so and take their concerns seriously. So also Marcel touched on the point and Peter as well. And it's also to turn these kind of users to your best fans in a way, so that they support you the most. So this also requires that they have to feel the benefit themselves in a way when it comes to automate certain steps in their daily routine, for example.
Thank you. Marcel, maybe something to add from your side?
Yeah, so one point that was also slightly touched, but that's a point that is so important. I mean, I've talked about language barriers, so where we're helping people being a little bit less confused throughout their lives and giving them some more information up front before doing that. Obviously, if I'm looking at terminal personnel, what passfy is able to deliver to terminal personnel as well is that they have less questions asked that are repeated throughout the day, because today or before implementation of passfy, it's often been the case they're being asked the same question 30 times because the drivers just didn't know of that because they're in the port of Hamburg for the first time or something, and we provide them all the information in their language and all of that upfront so that the drivers are actually prepared. And so for the terminal personnel, they can take care of the relevant tasks rather than just repeating all over again to say what they've said before, and that with a language barrier. And that's one point. And the other point where we can obviously improve the daily life at terminals and in this environment quite a lot through digital tools, and that's not only the case for passfy. If we're looking to drivers and other personnel to give them tasks that they actually enjoy, and taking away all these tasks that they just need to do because some regulations are telling them to do that, and we take away these bothering tasks, then we enable them to really go to their strength that they have. And the things that they are able to do very well. And if I'm looking at the 15,000 drivers on our platform, what they're very good at is optimizing their routes and driving their trucks and bringing safety to the road. And they should concentrate on that instead of handling administrative tasks all day. And that's what I personally enjoy about all the automation and digitalization efforts, because it makes sure that the people can concentrate on their real job and not on the adjacent tasks around that.
Thank you very much. Great points. And I think that the night touched upon this, but when it comes to equipment automation, I think there is even not only the potential, in the automation to improve your current job, but maybe also tap into something completely new. Peter, maybe you could give like a perspective on this.
Yeah, I don't know if it responds to that question or kind of is a thread into connecting the two topics. But I think predictability related to automation is a big one, right? So when you introduce automation in this, terminal operations is super chaotic sometimes, right? Because you don't know if the vessel comes on time. There are global disruptions that can delay vessels or anything else around it, right? And so when you think about automation, the fact that you can know what's going to happen better rate, then you can have a smoother operation, and all stakeholders get a better life quality on their day job, I think. And on Danai's points, if you follow those step phases on how you introduce that, then when you go into your workplace as an employee there, they know more. And when it comes to, for example, autonomous terminal tractors, right, that can be a fear that, hey, what if they don't operate as they should? And that is, again, predictability. And having human-assisted autonomy, what we explained earlier, is that there's a human in there that is going to make sure that it works as expected, or it is not going to try to resolve situations that is not trained for. And I think that is true for all other processes that we have discussed around digitalization and others. So to me, that was one speaking points that I wanted to touch base on, is when I talk to terminal operators and we dig down, what is exactly that you want to improve is predictability. I want to know there's a choke point ahead in 20 minutes. How do I get rid of it? So digital twins, modeling, simulation, real-time data assessment, is all coming together at some point. And I think we're going to be blown away, how this whole thing is going to look like in 10 years. Maybe if you recall SimCity, that's going to be, this is exactly in real life, fully automated, but a lot of iron and a lot of robots out there.
Thank you very much. I think I would suggest we wrap up at this point. And I know that there are a few more questions, targeted to specific speakers here. So I just invite everyone, to reach out maybe via LinkedIn, connect, ask those questions directly, start a discussion. So don't be shy. And I would like to thank everyone for the attendance and the engagement here. And just a slight reminder that actually we're going to see all each other in less than 6 weeks in Valencia at CTEC. So come say hi. And the same goes for Talk Europe in summer. These are the events that the industry loves. So if you're there, come say hello, ask your questions, start a discussion. And thank you very much for attending today and taking part. And with this, we're wrapping up. Thank you very much to all the speakers.
Thank you. Thank you too, Maria.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.